Hello and good afternoon everyone, and thank you for joining our Backup Exec 16 webinar today. So we're joined here by Barnaby Wood from Veritas, who will be presenting the webinar with you, and we also have Daniel Sorenson, who will be doing the demo after Barnaby's finished. We also have Matt Compton here from Bytes, who will be discussing the relationship between Veritas and Bytes.
Thanks, Amy. So I'm Matt Compton, so I look after the data availability space at Bytes Software Services. So I started with the company 7 or 8 years ago now, and through that whole process we've been a strong partner of previously Symantec and Veritas now that they are split. Where we sit in the market is we have a good agnostic understanding of every vendor that sits in that backup DR archiving space. But we firmly believe that now that BE16 has been released and Barnaby are going to some of the new features and integrations with the cloud and VMs and physical, that it's absolutely best of breed technology in that mid-market and SMB space. And I think you'll be surprised by the amount of features that are in the new version. We have a dedicated team that focuses on the backup and archiving portfolio. We're able to offer anything from license assessments right through to fully technically managed services around Backup Exec, and due to that and other areas of the business, we were awarded EMEA Partner of the Year for Veritas in 2016, which I'm very proud about. A big area of the integration with BE16 is Azure, and I won't go into too much details, but at Bytes we currently hold 40% of the market share for Azure through the UK, which is a huge amount, and that's because of our specialist and dedicated team within house. So we feel that we're absolutely best placed to have these conversations with you around backup, which is obviously one of the biggest use cases for the cloud. So I'll be back on at the end to help with the Q&A, but I'll hand over to Barnaby. Thanks.
Great, thank you very much, Matt. So as Matt said, I'm Barnaby Wood. I work in the global product marketing organisation at Veritas. Responsible for Backup Exec. I started about 16 years ago looking after Backup Exec at Veritas, and this is, for us, is a really exciting time with the release of Backup Exec 16. And what I'm going to do today is spend about half an hour just talking through some recent survey work that we've done out in the marketplace, talk a little bit about the value proposition of Backup Exec as a whole, and then talk a little bit about the use cases that we integrate Backup Exec with Azure, in order to help you to leverage the benefits of cloud specifically. So we in June this year we actually worked with Spiceworks, who I'm sure many of you are familiar with as an organisation, to conduct a survey into Spiceworks community. Background noise. We're able to mute that. So we worked with Spiceworks and we conducted a survey around the globe with just over 900 respondents to that survey. And as you can see from the slide here, we worked with a number of organisations all in the sub 1,000 user space, with individuals in those organisations from different industries and different kind of job titles. And we asked a number of questions, and for the purposes of today, I've actually taken a subset of those questions to share some of those responses with you, to understand a little bit about where the responses we had in that kind of peer-to-peer community that makes up the Spiceworks community. So the first question we asked is, where is your data today? And this may come as a surprise to some of you. Certainly it was a surprise to some of us in Veritas that the majority of the data, from what we heard, is still being held in physical systems. So, whilst we've seen a rise of virtual over the last sort of 10 or so years, 10 plus years, the majority of data is still held and stored in physical systems, used by physical systems and physical storage today. So that plays a little bit into our history as well. So, from a Microsoft perspective, I'll talk a little bit more later, but from a virtual perspective, we started protecting VMware with Backup Exec in 2004. So, as soon as that technology became available, we were able to protect that with Backup Exec. And there's still a, make no mistake, there's a good proportion of data stored within and used by virtual infrastructures. And cloud, today is a small percentage relatively. But what was really interesting was when we asked where those respondents felt their data would be in 3 years' time. And we see quite a significant change. You can see the overlay of the numbers here. So although we see a very slight increase from 37% to 39% in virtual infrastructure, the majority of the shift in where that data is held in the next 3 years is anticipated to go directly to cloud. So, as we talk about a journey to the cloud, in many instances that journey is directly from physical systems and physical storage straight into cloud architectures. And so as you think about cloud as a whole, one of the questions, or what made up two of the questions that we asked was the main use for cloud today, and again in 3 years' time. And what you see on the graph here is that today 48% of organizations and those individuals that responded to our survey said they were using cloud in some shape or form today, and an additional 30% were expecting to be using it within the 3 years. And of that total 78%, backup and recovery, as Matt said just now, is the #1 use case, either in use or being considered over that period of time. So we're very excited to be on the back of that and to be working with Bytes to make the most of helping you to leverage the advantages that cloud brings. So as you think about where Veritas has come from and where Backup Exec in particular has come from, hopefully you're familiar to some extent with Veritas already. In terms of the top line here, we are a market leader across a number of across all the major segments that we work with, and then purely in terms of Backup Exec, the numbers are very, very significant. So we do have a very large install base, and that starts to generate the numbers of backups and restores that we can see going on in that install base through the telemetry that we have in the product and so on. And when you start to think about the amount of data that is stored, protected by Backup Exec today, a great deal of that is held on tape, and so we're certainly seeing a lot of impetus from organisations we're talking to saying, look, maybe I moved to disk, maybe I found a combination of disk and tape, but I'm really starting to see the benefits of moving away from tape into cloud and combining either disk and cloud, going straight to cloud, or thinking about what that looks like for me as I move my architecture forward. So as we on 7th of November we brought Backup Exec 16 to market, so it became generally available, and that's really, Backup Exec 16 is really reflected in the 3 words that we consider to be the value proposition for Backup Exec: powerful, flexible, and trusted. So what do we mean by each of these? Well, powerful really is a reference to the breadth of capability within Backup Exec, the set of technologies that are integrated into the product that help you to meet your recovery objectives. So it's really, there are many buzzwords that we can talk about, in terms of physical infrastructures, disaster recovery, bare metal recovery, in terms of virtual things like instant recovery, and in terms of cloud, we'll talk a little bit more later on about where we integrate with cloud and what the use cases are. But in all of those instances, the primary objective and the value that Backup Exec brings in helping to meet those recovery objectives is that breadth of technology and breadth of capability that's in the product that, for example, potentially lets you back up and recover faster which in turn enables the possibility of running multiple backups during the same period of time, where perhaps previously you were only able to run one or two. And ultimately, what that's all really about is reducing the risk in your environment, reducing the risk of loss. If you suffer a disaster, whether it's a small local issue, file deletions, corruptions, or whether it's something much larger, the aim of what we're looking at here and what we're focusing on is to reduce that risk in your business. So the second area then, flexible. So what do we mean by that? I referred earlier to a journey to the cloud. There are a number of different names for it, a number of different references that you'll hear made to that journey. But with Backup Exec, we kind of view it in two ways. Backup Exec, in terms of flexible, is about enabling you to make the right technology choice for your business without feeling the constraints of your ability to back up and recover that architecture. Whether that is whether you have your IT infrastructure hosted in virtual, physical, or cloud, one or more, or perhaps a mixture of all three. Backup Exec has the ability to protect today, irrespective of where you are today. It also has the ability to protect you to wherever you're going tomorrow. So if you're listening here today, I imagine you're looking at, considering, or already using cloud storage to some extent. So Backup Exec has the ability today to work in that environment as well. But it also has the ability to ease you along that journey between those different infrastructures as well. And as you start to think about legacy tools that you require in order to retain and restore data that was held in previous infrastructures as you move towards cloud, clearly if you have one backup and recovery infrastructure that's able to deliver across all of them, you simplify the management process of what you're doing and so on. And so as we think about trusted and what does that mean to us, it's really about giving you the confidence to know that as we deliver, as we deliver on our roadmap, that will deliver you timely platform and application support. So in fact, for existing Backup Exec customers with current maintenance contracts, we actually made Backup Exec 16 available in the middle of October, the day after Microsoft released Windows Server 2016. So we actually had day one support for that new platform, along with the Microsoft Azure support and support for HyperV 2016 as well. So our focus is very much on providing the earliest support that we can for those new technologies and platforms and applications, so that you can leverage the benefits of those new things as soon as you need to, without feeling constrained. And clearly, as you go through that process and you look to move either from an alternative backup and recovery product or an earlier version of Backup Exec, ease of installation and day-to-day operation is very high up on our priority list as well. It's really, for us, is about helping you spend less time doing backup, if you like. We recognize that backup is in effect a tax of doing business. You don't necessarily want to have to do it, but you do have to do it. So we're very focused on understanding how we can help you to do it very, very easily and spend the least time possible doing it. Likewise, when it comes around to pricing of purchasing, license management, and renewal of those licenses, renewal of that maintenance, to receive the ongoing upgrades and the benefits of technical support and so on, we want to make that as predictable and simple to understand as we can, so that also becomes a very simple process for you. So I mentioned earlier our alignment to Microsoft, and as I think about the release of Backup Exec 16, we fully recognise that Microsoft is core to our business, and you see kind of side by side here the Microsoft release on the right-hand side with their server platform, their virtualization platform, and cloud storage that they're leaning heavily on, and their reference on the left-hand side, in their own words, a cloud-ready operating system is the way in which they refer to Windows Server 2016. and that's then mirrored by the the Backup Exec message as well, around supporting and enabling that transition across virtual, physical, and cloud platforms within that single unified architecture that Backup Exec delivers. And clearly, that architecture needn't necessarily be in one place. If you have a distributed environment, or you have an environment that's distributed in terms of leveraging different types of technologies in different geographic locations, for instance, we're still able to centralize all of that with Backup Exec to centrally manage and administer and deploy and upgrade and restore from all of that environment. And as you start then to leverage the benefits of cloud storage, you start to build on that ability to back up pretty much anything and restore from pretty much anywhere. So in terms of Microsoft Azure itself, there's really kind of four architectures, some of which have existed in Backup Exec for some time, some specifically the Cloud Connector, which is brand new to Backup Exec 16. But hopefully this, this gives you an opportunity to start thinking about the way in which you use Azure storage and the way in which you architect backups to deliver the recovery that you need. So hopefully this is fairly straightforward as I talk through it. So the first instance is backing up directly to Azure storage. So backup to cloud is the new Cloud Connector with Backup Exec 16, and that enables us to send backup data from physical and virtual clients via the Backup Exec server directly to the cloud storage. And Daniel, in the demo after I finish speaking shortly, will show us what that looks like, because it is very, very straightforward to configure. And if you're familiar with Backup Exec already, you're familiar with managing disk or tape storage devices, this is going to be very, very familiar to you. It's not a new learning process. It's just extending that existing capability that you have with Backup Exec into Azure storage. So very, very straightforward there. The second instance then is around disk to cloud. So finding a combination of locally staged backups on disk, so you have perhaps the ability to recover a little more quickly from local storage directly back to the application servers, virtual machines, etc. And certainly the ability then to leverage technologies integrated into Backup Exec, like instant recovery for the virtual machines on HyperV and on VMware, but still being able to take advantage of cloud storage with Azure, perhaps looking at that as perhaps a little more of a medium to long-term storage facility or part of your DR plan as you move that piece forward. In a similar kind of vein, we also integrate with a number of cloud gateway devices as well. There's a number of examples of those, and in that kind of architecture, looks very similar to the previous architecture. Backup Exec actually writes to the cloud gateway, and it's the cloud gateway that manages the transition of data to Azure cloud. But because of the integration that Veritas has delivered with the third-party gateway provider, we're actually able to keep and maintain visibility of that data all the way through that process in order to recover back the data that's been protected from the Backup Exec server. So it's not a case of producing a backup of a backup that needs to be 2 or 3 step restored. It's all still managed directly from Backup Exec. As hopefully you would expect when it comes to restoring data from Azure Cloud Storage, again, that is the same automated process. So the same types of technologies that you're familiar with in backup terms. So the ability to have an automated granular recovery process. So you can select from your Azure storage just the items that you actually want to put back onto your client servers back into your VMs, and Backup Exec will manage that automated process to deliver the the correct items just when you need them back to where they need to go. And the other option then is to think about Backup Exec actually being hosted in Azure itself. So if you've got VMs running in Azure storage, Backup Exec is supported to sit inside that environment. And again, a couple of use cases here. So cloud to cloud use case. So you can start, if you have an existing cloud provider and perhaps you want to migrate some of your backups or your backup architecture into Azure, you've got the ability to do that with Backup Exec and migrate that data directly. But equally, if you have applications and primary storage hosted in Azure, then there's also the opportunity to host Backup Exec in Azure and take a duplicate copy of your data out of Azure and kind of view the backup and recovery process the other way around, and say, right, well, actually, my primary storage is Azure. I want my secondary storage to be, my local office or a local service provider, and that sort of on-premise copy of data becomes my secondary copy, my DR copy, where my primary is hosted in the cloud itself. So a couple of other things to mention then before I hand over to Daniel. Security, I'm sure, is front of mind as you start to think about moving data from your site into the cloud, and Backup Exec looks at that in two perspectives, both in transit and at rest. So secure socket layer built into Backup Exec communications, both between client and server and the cloud, and then the security piece around encryption of the data once it's at rest in the cloud, much as it is on disk or tape. Encryption is taken care of by Backup Exec. The management of that encryption is done within the Backup Exec console. All the keys are managed and logged within Backup Exec. So we're securing the data as it's on the move and when it's at rest in the cloud. So just kind of to summarize really then, as you start to think about perhaps integrating Backup Exec or your backups with Azure storage, with Backup Exec there's no additional licensing. As you look at for example the capacity licensing, the front-end terabyte licensing with Backup Exec, everything you need in order to migrate your backups either directly or as secondary storage to the cloud is included in that licensing. There's no additional licensing requirement from Veritas to start making use of Azure today. Daniel will show us how simple it is to view and set up and so on. So it's very, very straightforward. And because, particularly with the capacity licensing meter, because that's measured on the front-end storage that you're protecting, if you choose to make a copy of your data to your local site and then a secondary copy to Azure storage, again, there's no additional per terabyte licensing requirement there from Veritas. So the other pieces there list out the use cases that I talked through. Hopefully the security piece is clear as well. So I know we're going to have Q&A at the end, so in terms of leaving time for that, I'm going to hand over to Daniel to take us through a demo.
Okay, let's just see when I get the presentation. Okay, so since all the others presented themselves a little bit, I use my LinkedIn profile and say, so my name is Daniel Sorby. I've been working within Veritas and Symantec for a little bit more than 3 years in the inside technology pre-sales capacity. I've also come from IBM prior to that and helped build private cloud configurations in a small hosting company in Sweden. So that's a little bit of me. However, looking at Backup Exec 16 and the possibilities which you can do with the latest and greatest of Backup Exec, I will start a little bit of Azure. So, as Barnaby said, we can now use Azure as a passive backup storage target. So I'm just going to go through a little bit of how you set it up in Azure today. So first and foremost, set up a free account or an account in Azure so you at least can start deploying it. Easily then afterwards is you go in and create a storage account. So we say, so I'm just going to name this randomly for this part, and I also put it as a resource group. Okay, and it will then easily start to create within Azure itself. It will take a few minutes while it's doing this, and we can sit here and refresh, but I will go back over to the deployments as we speak. So here, Barnaby also talked about having a multi-site deployment. So possibly I want to deploy and do a passive target to Azure, but maybe I want to have an active backup in my on-site, and I might want to have an active backup in Azure. So the very same thing, going into Azure, deploying a virtual server, and I'm going to go back to Azure. As you can see here, you have the possibility to deploy virtual machines, and therefore you can, in those virtual machines, add and deploy Backup Exec, for instance. So linking those two together, if you have two servers with the Active Directory, will then be able to use backup on one site and duplicate using our optimized duplication into the other site. However, if you rather want to use the Azure Blob, the passive storage target in Azure, I'm going to show you here what you need to do. First, you created the storage account, and then you will need to create a container within this storage account. So we're just going to create this one as the part of my Backup Exec server. So while I'm doing this here, we will go back to our server. Actually, that's our other servers that I will show you later. Then we will go in and configure storage. I will, as you see here, I have 3 Backup Exec servers in this environment, but just on the basis of building and showcasing the Azure part. Then you select the Azure. And then you, well, this is basically the address you have to write in. Then you want to add your Azure account. Now, I've done this multiple times, so you will see here I have huge amount of many users in here. However, this one, we copy the username, and then you saw that there was huge amount of, well, we have this long key. We have 2 keys for every container that is created, user and username. So basically then we say, okay, we want to use this. I want to use this user. It's Azure, azure.com, and we will now hopefully detect the container that I created. So you see here, Bytes container is there, and what it will do then, we will say deploy it, and it will ask to restart the server or the services on the Backup Exec server so it can start deploying the container itself. And we will restart it, so you will see here how it's restarting the services while we're doing other stuff while it's doing that. So that's part of the Azure. While we're deploying Azure, we will show you a little bit of how virtual works and how we can do part of the virtualization layers. So here I have a VMware 6.0. I do know that we support VMware 6.5. VMware 6.5, it's something that our competitor who says they are the best in virtual don't support yet, for instance. So here we can just give you a little bit of a show of how this easily works. From this point, I've done the backup of my virtual machines in this environment, and what I want to just showcase for you here while running this is an instant restore. So we go in, we select the hypervisor layer, and we will then select which part it should go in and deploy the virtual machine. I will also say I won't have any network selected. You also need to deploy, in an instant restore scenario, you need to deploy the rights for the virtual machine somewhere, because it won't be allowed to run on the Backup Exec. So it will create a local cache in the host on the selected storage. And then I will say it should power it up. You can say that then you can select that it should run on a schedule automatically after you've done the backup, etc., just to text the virtual machines. But I will just do this and run it on the fly. So here we shall see in the job monitor, it's running the initialization phase. You will see in my vSphere client here that it's going to deploy the data store, and boom, you will see directly the virtual machine. So how it's coming up into and starting up. This takes just a few minutes. The comparison of HyperV versus VMware here is that in VMware it takes us about 15 seconds to come up and show the NAS from the Backup Exec server. In a HyperV it takes about a minute, but it's very fast, and then you're very fast up and running with your applications. So that is instant restore for our virtual environment. Going back a little bit into the Azure deployment. So as you saw here, I created the container. We will go into the container, and as it's now registered, you will see that it's already registered our open storage technology files, basically how we work with various cloud deployments. So we then create the files. So already now it says that it's negotiated, it has it as a target. So this is what you can see, the Azure Bytes. And if I now want to do, for instance, let's select, I want to do a backup. So I want to do a backup of this machine. Let's just say I want to actually do the backup to deduplication disks. Actually, we will just create the scenario so you see a little bit how it works in the interface. So what is now, I'm just telling it to run the backups or start a backup creation of this profile. So I'm taking my Windows Oracle server here, and I want to do one backup. Either I can select certain resources, or I can then, of course, select just a few files where I want to move it. Takes a little bit long time when we have just a short time to show. Yes, of course, this is a lab environment, so in this all my systems are basically virtual. However, in this scenario, I'm going to use them as a physical resource. So it detects the system. I now have the backup to my local deduplication store. I can, of course, say I want to duplicate this to a cloud. I want to convert it to a virtual, and I want to as well duplicate it to the separate deduplication server on my separate site. So now I can create my various profiles of how I want to run my backups, into which storage target it should run, and how it basically should be done. So you can have a virtual convert, which is already prepared and ready in the point of a physical failure in a different hypervisor, for instance. So that's just how you then basically create the various parts of this. Actually won't create that one. I have already run this before to the various Azure components. It takes about 5 minutes for it to negotiate the Azure phase before, and then the speed of your internet is going to be the part of how fast it's going to run the backup in running into an Azure store. So that's part of it. If you have run a backup, So if you want to do a restore, this is the second part of how we will help you in Azure. So for instance, now I have files and folders, folders and volumes, and I now want to select them to restore them. So I can see the various points I have done this backup, so I will say, okay, I want this. So this is the second part of how I do it, and this is the very part of where I now want to create it to a different one. I can actually restore all of my physical files or all my files and folders automatically into VHDX file, prepared directly to kick off and start as a virtual file in your Azure deployment. So any type of file you have, you just create it and you start it at your restore scenario. So this is a little bit of how we can help, how we can deploy Azure overall. Let's see here if I have another. Well, then I have a HyperV demo, but I think now I've taken a huge amount of time showing you the ESX virtual environment, otherwise as well as the Azure deployment. So I think this is all for me from the demo environment right now.
Thanks, Daniel. So to summarise, what next? So most of you will, or I'm guessing all of you will be on previous versions of Backup Exec, or you're not a Backup Exec user. So for those that you are currently using the technology, are you interested in upgrading? There's the Veritas team at bytes.co.uk email address at the bottom of that page there. If you get in touch with us, we'll be able to provide you with keys for trials for Backup Exec 16 for customers that are not using it, or we can provide you with a free license assessment to see that if you are eligible for an upgrade free of charge to 2016, or if there is a cost associated, and also if you have access to the Azure plugins so you can start playing around with some of the tech that Daniel just showed us. So as I said, just contact that Veritas team if you've got any questions on the back of today's webinar. But we'll just hand over now. So as you will see on the side of your screen, there is a option for questions. If you click on that option, you'll be able to type in any questions that you may have. We've had one come in during the webinar, but any of you that have questions as we go through the Q&A, just pop them in there, and either myself, Daniel, or Barnaby should be able to answer you there. So one of the questions I've got here is Azure available to buy through Veritas? And I could probably take the answer on that. So no, so Azure is obviously a Microsoft product, so you would use your Microsoft LSP, your license provider, to provide you with that. Of course, Bytes are a large Microsoft house, so we'll be able to provide you with the Azure commit, as well as the Backup Exec licenses too. So one of the questions, another question that's come in, probably for good one for Barnaby, is where can we get training on Backup Exec 16?
Okay, yeah, thanks. Great question. So, so we actually have a website where you can get either online training. There's free online training. In fact, it's all available via backupexec.com. There's a training section there, and that will take you through to free online training. But we do also have classroom training as well. I believe it's a 2-day course. There's an extended 5-day course as well, administration course. And Bytes should be able to help you out with registering and paying for that classroom training, which is chargeable. But there is free online training as well. There is also, probably worth mentioning, the Veritas Vox community, VOX, which you can access through veritas.com. There's quite a bit of information on there as well that you might find helpful. So there's a series of blogs, blog posts that are contributed to by the likes of myself, but also the product management and engineering teams. But there's also an online community there. So you'll find that some members of our community do things like they build out their own sort of blog posts in the community blog section and build their own YouTube videos and things like that, which you may find helpful as well. So depends on the extent of training that you're looking for, but we've got a full range, right from sort of free online video-based training from the community and from Veritas right through to classroom training.
Great, thanks. We've had a couple of questions come in that are closely related, so I'll read them both to you and then I'll let you cover it. So when you purchase Backup Exec, does it come with 1 year support as standard? And then a second question from another participant is the pricing for Backup Exec, is it a one-off or is it subscription based?
Right. Okay. Yeah. So to the first question, yes. So the initial license is a bundled license. It comes with 1 year's maintenance as standard. You can choose between basic and essential maintenance, which is really dependent on the time you believe you're going to be using tech support if you need it. Basic is 12 by 5 support. Essential is 24 by 7. And to be honest, the price differential between the two is not very big anyway. So 1 year is bundled. You have the option to extend that within that initial purchase should you wish to. You can buy up to 3 years up front, and obviously that maintenance contract can be extended year after year, because as well as the technical support, it also includes the upgrade assurance, so the free product upgrades, the feature packs, the full new versions, anything we release within your maintenance period, you'll get an email asking whether you'd like to download the latest, and you can download all of that from the licensing portal, and then the commitment then is just to renew your maintenance each year. Backup Exec is not, to the second question, available generally as a subscription. We do have like a rental program, but typically the licenses are sold as perpetual licenses. So it can be done as a rental agreement, which Bytes should be able to give you more detail on if that's a need. But typically it's sold as a perpetual license today.
Thanks, Barnaby. And just to add to a little bit to that in terms of the licenses. So a few versions ago, Veritas released a capacity-based license model that Barnaby did touch on earlier. There is promos available for customers to move from a traditional per server license-based model to a capacity. Those promos are usually quite attractive, not just from a commercial perspective, but also opens you out to all features of the product set. So if you're currently only using for physical, you could actually be eligible for VM backups and also now cloud backups by migrating to that model at a commercially attractive price. So certainly worth speaking to us to see if you can migrate to that model. Couple more questions. Will there be improvements in the speed of duplicating data to other sites?
So I think we probably need to dig a little bit deeper on that question to understand where the question comes from, but I'm assuming that comes from an existing user. I don't know, Daniel, whether you have any additional comments on this about optimized duplication.
Of course, it comes down to what your backup, how you're doing it, how is your network working, and if you're using our optimized duplication via the CASO possibilities, that should normally cut down your window a little bit. There are ways how to build your environment so it will be speedier in doing this. For instance, mount the deduplication database in SSDs and speed up the processing and the power of the deduplication, and that will help up those parts. When it comes to duplicating or replicating into an Azure or Amazon component, of course, that is normally full storage, so it will still have to write directly as those components. I do know that the engineering is talking various parts, but that is talks, and as of yet, I cannot disclose anything from that.
Okay, great, thanks. Cool, so unless there is any more questions come in, there is a couple there that we will get in contact directly with a couple of participants about requirements and quotations rather than covering on a webinar with everyone. So there is a feedback form on your screen, so please, we do urge you to fill that out. It just makes us, gives us the feedback to understand what is good about these webinars, what isn't so good, so that we can tweak them and make them as relevant to what you require as possible. So that concludes the webinar. It will be, it has been recorded, so you will be able to share with colleagues, and we will send that out to you on the back of this call. Thank you all for taking the time out to attend the webinar. I hope you found it useful, and look forward to speaking to you in the near future. Thank you.